Okay. So one of the most transformative and insightful things that I learned about studying the Torah, I learned from a Catholic priest. Well, actually, he was a Catholic seminary student who, like me, was in his final years of study before ordination. Brother Daniel was my counterpart when I served as a chaplain at City of Hope Cancer Hospital in Southern California. And at the urging of our supervisor, we would have a Bible study once a week during our internship. As we sat down to study our only shared text, which was the Hebrew Bible, or what Brother Daniel referred to as the Old Testament, we started with the familiar and seemingly ecumenical stories of Genesis, similar to the story of Jacob that we read this morning. It was impossible, that text study that we did together, that Bible study. With all sensitivity and a desire to respect and support each other in our core interpretations of the text, we could ultimately never agree on anything of any consequence. We would acknowledge the other's perspective. We learned where they were coming from and ultimately understood how it had informed doctrine and ritual and belief, but we could never agree. One day, both of us, frustrated, one of us asked the other the question, which maybe we should have asked earlier on. I don't recall who it was that said it, but one of us asked the question, when you read the Bible, what are you looking for? Brother Daniel said that he was looking for answers, and I said that I was looking for questions. And it was then that I learned the difference between exegesis and eisegesis. Now, if those words sound like something you once knew and have since forgotten, don't feel ashamed or any shame at all. 25 years ago, as a rabbinical student, I had never really considered them either. Eisegesis is the process of interpreting text in such a way as to introduce one's own presuppositions, agendas, or biases. It's commonly referred to as a reading into the text. And I learned from Brother Daniel it was how he and many Christians, not all, but many Christians, read the Hebrew Bible, trying to find, in his view, evidence of the prophecy of Jesus. Exegesis is the critical interpretation of the biblical text to discover its intended meaning. It is to extract meaning from the text, usually through challenging the text and asking questions of it. It's how Jews generally, not always, but generally read the Bible. It is to ask the question, what does this story or this commandment require or ask of me? So a light bulb went off for both of us when we realized this and had this conversation, and we went back to our supervisor and we explained our newfound insight and why we thought that this was a fruitless exercise, that neither of us wanted to convert the other, of course. And our supervisor said, that's not the point, but you don't need to study together anymore, as you have already learned the lesson. Now, he said, when you visit patients of each other's religions, you will understand the look in their eyes, because it is informed by how they see their faith. To overly simplify it, the note that I wrote in my journal that day, and I still have, that I took with me on my hospital rounds, was Christians are looking for answers from God, Jews are asking questions of God. Now, again, that's an oversimplification and generalization, but that's how I wrote it down. Christians are looking for answers from God, Jews are looking for asking questions of God. But all of this raised a bigger question for me, which I've been trying to answer ever since, which is, what is Jewish faith? My colleague, Rabbi Noah Farkas, framed it this way in a Devar Torah that he shared with me. In this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, we see one of the patriarchs of Judaism, Jacob, struggle with this very question. Now, Jacob is no theist. He does not follow God's command like Noah or Abraham, nor is he quietly following the faith of his father like Isaac. While many of the ancient rabbis want to color over Jacob's tensions, saying that from the moment of his birth he wanted to go to synagogue, you can find that in the Midrash, the plain sense of the text teaches us that Jacob takes after his mother, Rebekah, who questioned faith during her pregnancy, and even takes after his grandmother, Sarah, who laughed at God. Jacob was skeptical of faith, was always living in conflict. In this week's Torah portion, Jacob's journey through faith includes a test of God, saying, in essence, in Genesis chapter 28, if God is with me on my journey, then the Lord shall be my God. The expression of Jacob's faith is formed in a question, in the potential that there might be a God, and that God might take notice of him, watch over him on his journey. Now, Jacob proceeds on his journey with no assurance that God will watch over him and protect him, because either way, he can't stay where he is. As Carl summarized for us, Jacob is trapped on one side of the river with his family on the other. His perhaps vengeful brother's army is bearing down upon him. Jacob can't stay where he is. And so Jacob walks, with or without God, propelled by necessity, propelled by the question, what will be from a life that has led me to this moment? Rabbi Farkas again sums up Jacob's life this way. Nothing ever came easy for Jacob. No guarantee was ever found. In his youth, Jacob was in conflict with his brother Esau over the birthright. In his emerging adulthood, he was in conflict with his father-in-law Laban, with his wives Leah and Rachel through the struggle of love. Later in life, with his children, whose near murderous rivalry brought the whole family into hundreds of years of exile in Egypt. That's how we got into Egyptian bondage and slavery. There was never a moment in Jacob's life that was free of tension and uncertainty. In Judaism, spirituality does not come easy, and faith is not a leap across an abyss. Faith is a struggle. There's a concept in Judaism that we actually should thank God for our struggles, that struggles and questions and challenges, they are a blessing in our lives. The thinking goes that if things come too easily, if we don't wrestle with the question, it has less meaning, that we don't own it, but rather we inherit it. Inherited things, of course, still have value, but their value is what they meant to someone else and in our safeguarding of them. Think family heirlooms. Think about your Shabbat candlesticks or your Hanukkah menorah. It may have been something that belonged to a parent, a grandparent. It has value to you. You cherish it and protect it. You guard it. Yet it's not something that you earned necessarily. We know this as much as we appreciate and even cherish what we have inherited. It is those things that we struggled for, worked hard for, fought for, that have a value, a different value, that maybe have a deeper sense of ownership. Life's lessons learned are the most obvious of examples. How we act in the situation, how we guard and protect our relationships, if we are wise, those rules to live by are informed by all the times that we failed to learn the lessons or follow our own rules to live by. If you've ever attained something or salvaged something you worked so hard for, you know what I'm talking about. That is the faith of Jacob, our biblical ancestor, the progenitor of Judaism. Judaism is a religion for the searcher and the struggler. And Jacob struggles with an angel on the banks of the Jabbok and is renamed Israel, Yisrael, meaning the one who struggles with God. Jacob gets this name again, receives it again, this time from God in God's own voice, not through an angel, in Genesis chapter 35. And we take our name and our faith from him. Again, my colleague Rabbi Farkas sums it up so well. He says that we are the children of Israel, not of Abraham or Moses or David or anyone else. Judaism finds joy and meaning in the immortal questions of life. We pore over them day and night, repeatedly, and learning in conversations and pushing for more just and a redeemed world. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, Zichron Livracha, may his memory be a blessing, summed up Judaism and this struggle this way. He said that to be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. Judaism is a sustained struggle against the world that is, in the name of the world that could be, the world that should be, but is not yet. I have visited a lot of patients in hospital rooms since those days more than a quarter century ago, when I was a young rabbinical student, when I thought that I had more answers than questions. Whenever I enter the room, I am aware of at least two things. First, no matter who I am there to visit, if there is another patient in the room and their curtain is open, I will stop by their bed as well and introduce myself, say hello, and offer a prayer for healing if they want one. The second thing I am sure to do, more than anything else, is to listen. I listen for questions and I listen for answers. Because ultimately my faith, like Jacob's faith, has been enriched by learning what I don't know, be they questions I don't know to ask or answers I don't know to heed. Shabbat Shalom.